Hey there, fellow founders. Are you looking to unlock the secrets behind rapid business growth? Join my vibrant meetup group where we dive into masterclasses on game-changing strategies every single month. We've tackled topics like building a lean marketing engine, crafting killer lead magnets, and leveraging gateway offers to sell high-ticket offers. And trust me, you don't want to miss out on the next one. Come share your experiences, learn from the best, and let's grow together. Sign up and be part of the next masterclass by going to events.sarahnoelleblock.com. That's events.sarahnoelblock.com. Welcome to episode 151 of the Uncut Summer Series. This is Tiny Marketing, and I am Sarah Noelle Black. Today, I'm sharing a live training called Silent Selling, where you learn how to upsell without being pushy. Content should always be selling, any type of content you're creating. So if you've ever followed my LinkedIn posts, for example, you'll notice that I have little offer threads throughout that. In my podcast, I'll have little offer threads. And what that is just nodding to the offer that you have and mentioning it. So on social media, it might be the super signature where you have like the 3 dots. And then you go into what you do, who you serve, and how they can work with you. In an email, an offer nod might look like you have your email and then you have a PS line in your signature that explains what your offer is. Or, for example, in my signature, in my email, I have, these are 3 offers that are like bridge offers that would make sense for you. Something micro, something low cost, something that someone who is just emailing with me could be interested in. And then in my podcast, it's talking about the thing and then referencing how we talk about that in the club. So it's all about referencing. And the reason my content is just there and ends there without a hard sell is because it's awkward. There's the sales psychology behind selling. So we're going to scroll down on here and feel free to use this notebook as we're talking. So let's talk about sales psychology. People resist the hard sell because it feels manipulative. The second I smell a sales pitch happening, I run. I bounce right out of that training. And you're not going to sell anything if someone is bounced and hasn't even heard about the offer in the first place. So it feels manipulative, like the training, like a bait and switch. You did the webinar, but actually it was just a sell. It's also, pushy marketing. So there's this innate fear of or distrust of some marketing. If it's overly salesy, you're like, what aren't you telling me? And then the need for autonomy in purchasing decisions is another piece of that. For myself, when I love being sold to when the offer makes sense for the challenge that I'm having, but I also want autonomy in that decision-making process. I've already taken myself through that sales process by, you mentioning, threading in your offer into the thing that you taught me. And then I'll go to your podcast and I'll binge that. I'll sign up for your newsletter. I sell myself, but I can't sell myself unless I already know what you do. The coach that I'm working with right now, she does this beautifully. I downloaded a masterclass of hers and she just mentioned her offer while she was doing the training a couple of times. And then I signed up for her podcast and I was like, I don't want to work with anybody else but her. So I was in, but I sold myself. So secret selling works because it builds curiosity instead of pressure. So what you're doing instead of saying, hey, you have to do this in this time frame. There's no other way to do it. You won't even get this offer otherwise. It's just building curiosity. It gets people excited about the potential of the offer. It encourages natural engagement, and I'll explain more of that later. But if you've been on any of my trainings, then you have probably heard me use the reference consensual sales. I don't start a sales conversation unless they have given me the okay. They have said, yes, I want to have a sales conversation. So everything just starts with a conversation. And then they are the ones that say, actually, can you tell me more about your offer? And then it shifts the buyer into an active decision maker. So you are giving them this training. You are telling them the different ways that they can work with you and how your offer will help them accomplish the thing that you're doing on that webinar. But it lets them make that decision instead of pressuring them. A lot of times at the end of a webinar, you'll hear, okay, so I'm going to give you this discount during this time frame. You have to do it by the end of the night or it disappears. And that is kind of icky because you're not giving them this space to make that decision. If they don't act based off of these next 3 tactics that I'm going to teach you, then move them to a nurture period, because it is very rare that someone goes to an initial training and then they happen to, one, be ready to work with you immediately. They have the money in place. They have their calendar open. And they're at the exact same challenge point where they would need to work with you immediately. It's very rare that those things collide when you're having that webinar. It's usually that they see this problem happening, or they can foresee the challenge that you're talking about in your webinar happening, and they know that they're going to need this eventually. And that's why nurturing is so important after this. And we're going to see later in this workbook that there's a nurture strategy around this too. All right. So let's get into strategy number 1, and that's private invitations. So the concept is a VIP experience where only the high intent leads from your webinar are getting personally invited. So instead of doing a mass pitch at the end of your webinar, you are picking and choosing the people that make the most sense for that webinar or for that next offer. So you're going to send personalized follow-up emails or messages inviting them to the next step of the conversation. And that might be based off of how active they were in that webinar or the questions that they asked during that webinar. Those are good indicators that they're giving you a little mini hand raise that they need the offer that you have now rather than 6 months from now. And use some exclusive positioning on it. So I only open this up to a handful of people. I'm sending this just to the right fit people from this training. You want them to know that this isn't a mass email. This isn't a marketing email that's going to everybody who attended. This is private for you, and it should be, because not everybody who attends your webinar is going to be the right fit for the offer. And let's say you have maybe 20 people who attend your webinar. It's not going to take you very long to go through that and make a list of the people that would make sense for the offer to give private invitations to. That personalized approach works really, really well. And if they aren't ready to work with you immediately, even if you picked them as someone who would make sense for a private invite, it deepens the relationship. So whether or not they move forward immediately, you are deepening that relationship, and make sure to keep nurturing them. So here are some examples. Let's see. So a post-webinar email that highlights their engagement, what they did during that webinar. Maybe it was a workshop and you had a section where you guys were doing a read aloud of the thing that they were working on. And so reach out to them and talk about that. Hey, that was a really great read aloud on that. And invite them to a strategy call. I would love to digging deeper on this and brainstorm on that idea you talked about in the workshop. And that would invite them to a one-on-one conversation where they have the opportunity to consent and say that they're ready to move forward into a sales conversation and learn more about your offer. Another way to do this is kind of behind the scenes. So if you have seen some of my other secret sales trainings before, then you have probably seen my action link strategy. So I'll explain that real quick. That's when you have an email. Let's say it's your regularly scheduled weekly newsletter that goes out to all of your people. But the link that you have in that email, you set up an action. So it segments them to an interest list. So let's say you have a podcast that is specifically about your offer. It's a very direct sales podcast episode. They click on it, then you can automatically segment them to a list of people who are interested in that specific offer. So then when you're sending offer emails, it's only to people who have given you that mini hand raise. So this would be similar, but in a webinar format. So this would be like you put out a poll or a chat, and anybody who interacted with that poll answering a certain question, they are the people that would get that private invitation. So that is another way that you can find those little hand raises that tell you that someone is ready to work with you. They answered that poll in the way that would make sense for them to be ready for your next offer. So let's go over to section 2, strategy 1, the private invitations. So let's consider a recent webinar or event that you have done. And I know a bunch of you. So I know you either have ones coming up or you've recently done one. So let's write down 3 ways that you can identify engaged attendees for your most recent event. I'm going to give you 2 minutes. This won't take long. I'm setting my alarm. There. Oops. That was 2 minutes and 30 seconds. All right, 2 minutes. I want you to write down using, knowing the tools that you have that you use for your event. Write down 3 ways you can identify engaged attendees. And for anybody who came in late, the workbook is pinned in the chat. All right, we're going to pause right there. Now let's talk about crafting that private invitation. So that might feel awkward for you. I know the first time that I sent one, I was like, I'm not 100% sure how to say this. But they actually work really, really well. And I'm not even saying that just from the perspective of someone who sends them. They work really well on me. I have gotten plenty of private invitations that were clear that they were just for me. And I'm like, hell yeah. Yeah, I do want that offer, actually. So let's craft our private invitation template. But I also want to take it one step further and talk a little bit about how you can make it even more enticing. So here's a quick template in the workbook of what you can use to start with. But I want you to customize it. I'll set the alarm again for 1 minute for you guys to do that. So here's mine. Hi, Name. I noticed you were really engaged in our webinar, especially when we talked about, and then insert the specific topic. I wanted to personally invite you to whatever the next offer is. I think it would be a great fit based on what you shared. Would you be open to a quick chat? So that next step, strategy call, exclusive offer, etc. Fill in the blank there because your sales process is going to be uniquely yours. So that could be, I'd like to invite you to a brainstorming session. Maybe that's the first step that everyone goes through when they work with you. Or I'd like to invite you to whatever your gateway offer is. That could be it. But whatever that first step of your sales process is, that's what you would want to insert there. It should be low risk. It should be not a big time commitment because you're just wanting to get a little micro S. You want them to move forward to the next step in the journey. They don't have to marry you yet. You just want to date. So sure, make sure that this is super personal. It's actually talking about the things that they were talking about in the webinar. It would be great too if you had somebody on that would take notes of who was really active in your webinar. Or you might even have a tool, an AI tool that will tell you that. I used Butter for a long time for my workshops, and it gave me an engagement report. So I knew exactly who was engaging the most, what people were talking about in the chat, and all of that. So depending on your software, the information could be right there in a dashboard for you. So I want you to take 1 minute to write out. Hey there, amazing founders. Ready to take your business to the next level? Join our Gateway Offer Challenge and watch your sales soar. In this challenge, you'll get mini Gateway Offer trainings to perfect your offers. Learn how to structure your documentation so it sells for you. Create buzz around your offer and identify eager clients with our sales training. Plus, get exclusive outreach templates that take the guesswork out of prospecting. And because selling should be fun, we've gamified this challenge. Who can sell the most gateway offers? And let's not forget, you'll also learn how to effortlessly upsell to your signature offer. Ready to level up? Join the Gateway Offer Challenge today. Your business will thank you. Go to challenge.sarahnoellblock.com. That is CHALLENGE.SARAHNOELBLOCK.com. Something like this, your private invitation that is low stakes and just moves them to that micro yes, the first step in your sales process. All right, I am setting it now. It's going to be 1 minute for you to write out your private invitation. And then when this 1 minute is up, I'm going to tell you the thing that will amplify it a little bit more. All right, 1 minute, 10 seconds. Boo. Okay. Time is up. So the thing that I love and that works on me all the time in these private invitations is when they also include a Google Doc landing page. So it is basically a sales page that gives all the information that someone would need inside of a Google Doc. So it feels very personal and exclusive because it's not public information. It gives you how much time would you need to invest in this? What is the monetary investment in it? What's included? It gives you all of the details, but I love that Google Doc landing pages or sales pages, they're not public. So they're included just in that private invitation. So I would step that up and add that as a link for them to be able to access so they can get the information they need to make a decision. Okay, let's talk about strategy number 2, which is offer threading. And that is really the only part of the sales process that should happen during the training. So the concept is seamlessly weaving your offer into the content instead of using a hard pitch. So how it works, drop mentions of your offer throughout the webinar in the most natural way possible. So an example of this is when you're doing a training, let's say you're walking them through 3 steps to be able to accomplish X. While you're talking about those steps, that's when you'll want to talk about the stories involved in those steps. Talk about the clients that you've helped through that step and what was the result. So telling little case stories is a great way to do offer threading. Oh yes, a Google page is so easy, just checking the chat. And I love them so much. And they're low pressure too for both parties. Feels really natural. Okay. So using case studies, stories, client wins that showcase your paid services or products throughout the training is a good way to offer thread while also still adding value because you're providing case studies pretty much explaining what that client did to get the result that your attendees want. So that is a really great way to do offer threading. Another way to do it is reference your frameworks or deeper insights that you teach inside of your program or that you execute inside of your service. So referencing the frameworks. And by the way, most of your webinars are probably going to be break off pieces from the greater framework that you have within your offer. And even if you think you don't have a framework and that you're just doing a thing, I guarantee there is a framework that you have established that you just don't realize is a framework. I think maybe half of you are inside of the Tiny Marketing Club. So if you go to Signature Offer course, there is a custom GPT I created that runs you through a bunch of questions, and then it tells you what your framework is. So you have one. Believe me, you have one. Okay. So let's talk through how you can do offer threading. So an example of this, one of my students in offer used the exact strategy and landed 10 new clients. So you're explaining what they did, the piece of the framework they used, and what the result was. Or you could say something like, I teach this in detail inside of blah, but here's one part you can implement today. So you want, and anybody who's gone through any of my active lead generator trainings will know this, but you want people to accomplish one goal, one milestone within the training that you're having. So you want them to walk away and be able to do a thing. It needs to be active. So this would be a good way to do that but here's one part you can implement today. This is one thing that you can do to have this win today. So let's look at your next or your most recent webinar. What are a couple natural ways that you can weave your offer into the content that you created? So in the chat, can you guys tell me what was the topic of your most recent webinar, whether it's past or future? I'd love to just start workshopping ideas on how you can offer thread. Don't be shy while you're thinking. I'll talk about one of mine. Let's see. 2 weeks ago, I did a training on 5 steps to building your lean marketing engine. And it was for a group of independent consultants that were working with a larger community, people who place them at different jobs. So I was there to train them on how to build their own marketing so they didn't have to just rely on that. And throughout that, I'm basically just teaching the framework of what I do inside of Tiny Marketing Club. So I was able to take out different pieces of the framework and talk about inside of the Tiny Marketing Club, we built this. And this was the result. This is how many newsletter subscribers X got, or this is how many people downloaded their podcast, something like that. So that's a good way to use an example as a way to offer thread. Okay. I was chatting just so you'd get to answering. All right, let me see. All right. So Meg's next webinar is called 5 Secrets to Selling with Confidence. And I missed the last word. Ease. Thank you. Okay. I love that because selling is my obsession. So I'm glad you're here today. So let's talk about how you can thread your offer into this. I mean, it's pretty it's pretty obvious. You have 5 secrets right here to selling with confidence and ease. So as you're going through each one of those secrets, you can talk about how you were able to pull a client through that, or the results a client had once they overcame that obstacle. Melissa, a smoother tax season, understanding how your controller and tax CPA work together. Okay. Do you, Melissa, have any ideas of how to offer thread? Because for me, knowing your offer, I would thread in, like, I worked with this client and they didn't have their documentation set up to be able to file their taxes effectively. So I sat down with them, and in a 90-minute session, I was able to get them on track, and their CPA was able to file their taxes on time. And guess what? They owed nothing. So there's an example of how you can offer thread using what you do in with that webinar. Rachel's next work.
Oh, yeah, go for it.
No, go ahead, Melissa. What were you going to say?
No, yeah, I do have a cool idea. I'm still missing like the piece, or I'm not offering the piece that's going to help them solve it for that day.
Yeah. So, but you would help them prepare for their taxes, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that you can thread it in that way, in the preparation, the preparing, getting ready for it. And you can tell stories about, maybe even you can tell a story about, like, a previous year, one of my clients was not ready for their taxes, and this is what happened. So that's when they hired me. We got them all set up, and then this year, this is what happened. A story like that could be helpful.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Rachel, my next workshop will be 1 month of content in 1 hour, and I'd use this to pitch my done for you bold day of content offering. So bold day makes me think it's a VIP day, which is awesome. That's a lot easier to sell, like post webinar. So you could talk about the results, like how much time your client got back because they were able to get a month's worth of content done in 1 hour. That could be a good way to go about it. I'm getting weird alerts. Let me know in the chat if you guys lose me. Okay. So I love that. I would say talking about results and time saving for Rachel's workshop would be a really great way to do the offer threading, because most likely the people that are going to it would be interested in saving time. I think that's probably the biggest takeaway for that. Okay. We have enough time. So let's look at this. Storytelling for offer threading. Use the prompt below to create a short customer success story that threads in your offer. Think about your next or your most recent webinar or workshop, and write down a way that you can weave your offer into the content that you're creating. So it feels natural. It's a story. You're using a case study or a customer success story to be able to explain the offer. So again, I'm going to give you 1 minute to write down, just brainstorm, because 1 minute's not a lot of time. Just brainstorm some ideas that would make sense for your next webinar. All right, I'm giving you 1 minute, and that's in the storytelling for offer threading section. There you go. You have 46 seconds. 10 seconds left. Okay. Time is up. Next, let's talk about strategy number 3, and that is slipping into the DMs. So there's so much emphasis in social media and in LinkedIn around visibility, and visibility is great, but it's also more vanity. It's more of an endorphin rush of when we get a lot of comments and likes on our posts, the real relationships are being built in the messaging, in the inbox. So the concept behind slipping into the DMs is moving the conversation from the one-to-many webinar to a one-on-one consensual sales opportunity. So how it works is encourage engagement through chats, polls, the Q&A, get people active and talking during the webinar so it feels like a community. And then post-webinar, you want to use a simple, non-intrusive outreach message to be able to start the conversation and deepen it. So you're moving from one-to-many to one-to-one in the DMs where it's not intrusive. And then position it as helping rather than selling. So one way to look at it is like maybe they asked a question in the chat and you looking at the chat. I'll dive into your chat in a second. So if you asked a question on a webinar and you wanted to go deeper with that particular person, a DM strategy would be the best way to do it. So they asked a question, you answered it briefly because it's a webinar and you're talking to a lot of people. But to deepen that relationship, you could go into the DMs and say, hey, I loved that question. I really wanted to be able to dig in it deeper, but since we were with everybody, I couldn't. So I wanted to continue that conversation here. So I see a lot of people hating on the DMs, and this is the way to not make it cringe, is actually extending the conversation that was already happening. So that is why I gave that how it works in a very particular order. So the reason that the first step of the slipping into the DMs is encourage engagement in the chats, the polls, the Q&A, so you can spark a conversation and you have something to go in deeper about. And that's when you're sliding into the DMs to dig in deeper on that topic. So an example could be, hey, I saw you asked this question during the webinar. I have a resource that might help. Do you want me to send it over? Again, I'm super into the consensual piece of this. I'm not gonna just send you a link. I'm gonna ask you, do you want this resource or not? Because I'm not gonna bother you if you don't want it. So I'm getting yeses every step of the way. Okay. Let me finish this section and then I'm going to get to your questions because this is a hot topic in the chat right now. Another way is, again, we're going with the consensual sales, is during the webinar, you can ask them, do you want to continue this conversation in the DMs? Comment, DM me. And that is when I will reach out to you and we can have a deeper conversation on this exact topic. So that is them asking them to raise their hand and tell you that they want to continue this conversation in the DMs. So in both examples, it's a continuation of the conversation that you're starting in the webinar. So I think because this chat is blowing up so much, we definitely need to do this section of the workbook together. So what are 3 ways you can encourage engagement during a webinar to create the natural DM opportunities? I can see you guys you're feeling better about it. I'm going to give you 1 minute to brainstorm on this, and then I'm going to answer the questions that came in through the chat while I was talking. I didn't realize this would be controversial, but I'm glad you feel better about it now. Okay. 1 minute is starting now. Brainstorm how you, using the tech that you use, can encourage engagement during the webinar that creates that natural bridge to the DM opportunity. All right. Time is up. I'm going through your questions right now. Do you have a way to encourage conversation that doesn't feel stilted or awkward, like so many webinars start with, say hi and where you're from? I was part of one webinar that had a kind of an interesting conversation starter, and it was icebreakers that he started with. So it was like an icebreaker kind of question. It was, do you like pineapple on your pizza? Or does that feel like the seventh circle of hell? It was like a question like that that got people started in the chat. Um, my normal questions in the chat are they're not stilted because I'm asking you questions in order to be able to solve a problem for you. So I usually ask questions that result in more of like a consultative conversation so that I have a real life in the moment example of how to solve that problem. So that's usually where my questions are. So I can live strategize with you. And I think that that works really well to make it not so stilted or awkward because it's not forced conversation. It's this is a strategy session. I'm giving you your time's worth in it. So those are two completely opposite ways to go with it. But polls are a great way to do this too for the people in the chat right now who are like, I don't like the conversation. Because polls provide a conversation without actually having to talk. So Claire said, depending on when the webinar is, I like to ask, what are you having for lunch? I'm trying to get some ideas. That's a good one. Like I was literally, I was 1 minute late for this webinar because I was on a sales call and they were telling me that their webinars are actually lunch and learns where they send them like Grubhub when they're doing their webinar. So that would be a great way to do it too, is like a virtual lunch and learn and asking what they're eating. You're not that weird, Trisha. I also hate icebreakers. I found this one particularly fun because I didn't have to participate because I was the speaker. Let's see. Read a meme somewhere that the woman said she'd rather go to hell than tell a group of people about themselves. I have a fun fact that I always go to. I got gored by an ox, and it's always a winner. So I'm so glad that that happened to me. Okay. So those are the 3 strategies that work really well for secret selling. I'm going to reiterate them real fast, and do not just jump because I'm also going to talk about nurturing attendees who don't convert. Okay. So real quick, we're going to run through those. We're sending private invitations to people that make sense. So if you had a quiet chat or you didn't do a poll, for example, and you need to figure out who would be a good fit for a private invitation, do a little stalking. Go through your attendee list, go on LinkedIn and see who would be a good fit to just start a conversation with them on that next step. Next is the offer threading. So just tell stories and relate your content back to your offer so people know what the offer is without pitching them. They just need to be informed and curious. And then 3 is slipping into the DMs. And it's not awkward, like so many of you in the chat said. It's doing it consensually because you're starting it off with a conversation that's happening in the chat. The conversation starts first in the webinar. Or you're asking them to tell you that they want to be DM'd by asking that in the chat. Clara says another good one is to pull the room to get a sense of your audience. Who is the business owner, the fractional contractors, etc. I love that. Polls work really, really well. You don't have to be super active to interact with it. Like if you're someone who wants to be on a webinar and just like sit there, camera off, mic off, I get it. I'm that person too. But a poll offers an opportunity to participate without being super active. Okay. For the last bit, I want to talk about nurturing attendees who didn't convert because you might be in a situation where you have a webinar or a training and nobody converted, but that doesn't mean that nobody is going to convert ever. As I was saying a little bit earlier, it's very rare that someone is in a position where they're experiencing the exact challenge that you solve at this very second. They have the money to solve that right now, and they have the time to work with you too. It's a trifecta of things that they need to have at that moment to be able to convert. It doesn't happen that often that they're ready immediately. So you need to be able to nurture your attendees who didn't convert. And my favorite way to do that, and if you scroll all the way to the bottom of this worksheet, you will see keep them warm. So this is a link to my nurture sequences that I use, but I'm just going to give you a high level breakdown of what I do after a freebie to get people invested in me, building a relationship with me. And that is breaking down the webinar. We'll say webinar since this is what the specific topic is, but it could be any type of freebie. Breaking it down into several teaching moments. So you're doing a deeper dive in each one of those emails that gives them a little bit more clarity around the thing that you taught. And then at the bottom, just have that little offer thread that reminds them, this is how we can work together. This is what the next step is. So it's not a direct sales pitch. It's just a reminder. Hey, if you are ready or when you're ready, this is how we do it. And you can click here and schedule that. So I like to send 5 to 7 sequences before I move them to a nurture sequence, to like my newsletter. So I'll take 5 to 7 of those learning moments from the thing that I was teaching, break it down, do a deeper dive, and offer thread within those emails, reminding them how they can work with me. So nurture, because most of the sales happen in the nurture. So which strategy do you think you're going to implement first? For me, I personally always do offer threading. That's a no-brainer for me. And I feel most comfortable with consensual selling. So the slipping into the DMs is my second favorite one because they've already indicated, or I have a reason to reach out to them because that conversation started in the chat. So those are my 2 favorite ones. The private invitations work like magic also, and they work on me all the time. I'm constantly buying from private invitations. So that is that. Selling is not about pushing. It's about creating an environment that makes it feel easy to move to the next step. So our goal throughout this secret selling journey is to keep people curious, help them understand how they can work with you, and tie the thing that they learned to your offer. Offer threading sounds perfect. I can also agree to invite them to do that first. I love the caps in there. So we know. Okay, awesome. Thank you guys so much for joining me today. If you want more, if you want access to this workshop, the workbook, office hours, and everything else the Tiny Marketing Club has to offer, head to the show notes page and you can sign up for as little as $150 to get started.